Really? I'm gonna take this off. Oh, hang on. We're starting. Hang on. No. Are we on?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I never saw that little blip.
Sorry.
Good morning. Today is Friday, April 1st, 2022, no joke. And we are meeting on H175, an act relating to the Beverage Container Redemption Center system, which is Senate Natural Resources and Energy's morning session. So with that, as our witnesses well know, and anyone who might be watching the stream later, the bill contemplates bringing, or the bill as received from the House includes bringing wine bottles into the bottle bill. So we wanted to check in with Mr. Albert, who's president of Vermont Wine and Grape Council, to get some, to hear your thoughts on if that's something you advise doing or don't advise, and anything else around the bottle bill and wine. So good morning, Mr. Albert. Good to see you again. I think it's been maybe 3 years since you visited with this committee.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and glad to see you gathering there, actually next to each other in real time, not virtually. Let me give you, our take on this particular bill. What we see is suddenly we're going to have to pick up bottles at retailers, pay for the pickup at redemption centers, remit unclaimed deposits back to the state, negotiate fees with haulers, and we're very small. Each one of us is a very tiny, basically farm-based enterprise. Register the bottles, stick labels on them, deal with the documentation, the cost, the labor, and the space that probably this will introduce. Just an observation, you see a lot of lightweight, mostly beer bottles along the road. You never see a wine bottle along the road. No one throws a wine bottle outside of the window of a moving car. What I understand from earlier testimony is that the percentage of wine bottles that are returned to the current recycling mode is very, very high. And so, it seems to me this changes, there'd be a major reduction in what is the commingled waste versus the deposit cycle waste. It's a sudden, decrease in the weight in one area, and then sudden massive increase in the weight in the deposit cycle. They're big, as you well know, clunky containers. And the question is, maybe many consumers just won't bother to haul them back to the respective recycling locations. They're big, they're clunky, they're heavy. By the way, we and many other wineries in Vermont use minimum weight bottles. Our bottles are probably 15 ounces a piece versus what used to be a 20-ounce bottle. So there has been some attempt to be responsive to that concern. Anyway, Vermont wineries, we're small. In fact, none of us can be considered even a medium-sized winery. We're farmers, and we're also more and more managing organically, which by itself is a challenge. Basically the farming we do is 12 months of farming. I've got a crew of 4 people right now out pruning the vines, and actually they thought this would be a spring day. It's not quite. Then they've been out in 5 above, 10 above all winter pruning vines. So it's really, honest to goodness, 12 months a year farming. Then they of course spend the summer tending the vines, protecting the vines. Then it's all hands on deck for a fall harvest. And After the fall harvest, of course, there's the vinification activity that happens most of the winter in the winery, while they simultaneously are out there pruning the grapes. So now we have to manage what I consider to be a whole new crop, the deposit cycle and its demands. By the way, only one Vermont winery has an automatic bottling machine. So basically, most of us would have to stick these little labels on by hand. So it just brings a question: is there any chance to reconsider H175? I understand both Vermont and some other states, Maine, Oregon, have been exploring something called extended producer responsibility, which is essentially, I understand, a way, at least one of the ways to apply that is each bottle that we use and every one of the other producers, respective producers use, there would be some kind of a tax on that, which we would pay. And then the revenue from that could be used to manage the recycle activity. Is there any consideration that instead of doing this route, that route can be considered? I understand that couldn't happen this year. It's a complex thing. It would probably go into another year. But anyway, that's a question I have.
Yeah. So well, a short answer is yes. I mean, we've had extended producer. We have an extended producer responsibility actually here on the wall, and it is exactly as you said. It's the complexity of constructing that system that led us to conclude that in the second half of a biennium, the time wasn't right to take up a complicated bill like that and move it. So it's been part of an ongoing conversation for several years. And to your point, Senator Campion has a question.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair and Mr. Albert. I think it's really more of a question for the room that's present, and that is who does put the stickers on? It's because this keeps coming up, and I just need clarification. Stickers would be put on by Mr. Albert, and he's the producer. It's never going to be at the store itself. Is that accurate? It's always going to be the producer.
Well, that's, I think, an open question. We've heard proposals like cartons of bottles would come out with sheets of stickers, and they might be applied by the retailer at the time of shelving the product. So I know there's different proposals in the air. I don't think it's been.
As the bill is written, do we know?
I would want to read it carefully, make sure. I don't think it's.
And Mr. O'Grady isn't on. He didn't. He read it. Okay, thank you. I think it's just when you mentioned that, Mr. Albert, the question about who's going to be putting the stickers on, it keeps coming up. In different conversations I'm having with retailers or saying they are, and then I thought it was the producer, and so it's just. I appreciate you raising it. It's something I need to get some clarification on.
Yeah, my understanding is it would be actually a two-tier kind of thing. We as a producer, if I then sell that directly in my tasting room, I would put the sticker on. When I sell the corresponding bottle to a distributor, to Vermont Wine Merchants, which is my Vermont distributor, I could say, hey, you guys put them on. Of course, they can tell us, hey, we'll take your wine if you put them on. So I mean, those two levels of channels that either we do it, and if we don't do it, I think the distributors would do it. And of course, they have to deal with all the wine that comes from all over the world that they buy and then in turn sell to stores and restaurants.
Thank you.
Right. Have you considered, if this were to go forward, have you considered the idea? I've seen some wine bottles with deposit language on the back label. Had you considered that option at all?
I would go for that option. Yes. Yeah. Of course, I've got bottles of previous year bottles. Those I'd have to put on by hand.
Senator McCormick.
Thank you. First of all, I think you already said this at the beginning of your testimony, but how many people are you speaking for? You're heading up.
Oh, okay, we have 20 members, plus or minus, of the Vermont Wine Council. About 15 of us, you can actually visit and sample wine at. And many of those are in the distribution cycle as well. You'll see 4 or 5 different brands of wine on store shelves in Vermont that are Vermont produced wines.
So you're speaking for a big segment of wine, Vermont wine.
Yeah, basically for virtually all the Vermont wineries, if I can understand that.
Well, it's gratifying to hear you say that you acknowledge some responsibility for the waste product that comes from your product. Because for many years, we've had people who do not take responsibility, who insist that once they sell it, the waste product belongs to the purchaser.
Yeah.
And not them. And my attitude has always been your product, your profit, your problem. And it sounds like you're willing to take some of that on, which I thank you for it. That's answering the big questions is often easier than answering the little ones. In other words, what is the right thing to do is an easier question sometimes than what are the details of how we're going to do it. Are you aware of I think it's in Sweden, where they pretty much any product that's sold, part of the price is the cost of its eventual disposal. And I think that's sort of what you're talking about here for wine bottles.
Yes, yeah, and I've spoken to quite a few other people in our organization, and I think all of us recognize that, to varying degrees. I personally recognize it. I see what's happening overall in the wider world with, the great issue of packaging is essentially it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. What do we do with all that stuff? We want products, and we want them in, well encased. And I believe most of us really recognize our responsibility there. We're part of the benefit, and we're part of the problem. And I believe most people would feel comfortable with some financial responsibility being theirs to solve this thing. And so my presentation to you is not so much, hey, we don't want to pay for this thing. It's, what is the most efficient way of managing this challenge that I guess we in part created? And just one other little question on the bill. I noticed that dairy products are exempt, or milk anyway is exempt, and non-alcoholic cider is exempt. And why are those two picked out for different handling than us? Is that because they're farmers? We're farmers too. Unfortunately, we're also in a sector where there's thousands and thousands of other bottles that come from the world of wine, and they're not Vermont farmers, but we are Vermont farmers.
That's certainly a fair question, and I'm not, I won't pretend to speak for how the House made those choices, to draw the lines. But there is, Senator McDonald was saying there's a tradition in this state of exempting dairy farming and dairy products from various forms of regulation.
And I also certainly well recognize, the challenge. Dairy farming is, to talk against what my point is a different factor to what we have. We're vertically integrated. In other words, we grow the crop, we process the crop, and we sell it directly, and we can choose the price of how we sell it. Where a dairy farmer obviously is in a different regime where, there's a fixed price, take it or leave it. Although that's not the case with the cider. The cider is vertically integrated just like us.
Sure. Okay. Well, any So, thank you, Mr. Albert. It's been helpful to talk with you again. Any committee questions for Mr. Albert before we go to our next guest? So in short, yeah, the bill is, sort of not locked down. It came over here and we, as you know, we start from scratch, considering each thing in the bill and taking testimony on everything that comes up as a question and help us learn more. So thanks for participating.
And thank you for having me.
With that, I'd like to turn to Mr. Mazzona from the Vanville's General Store and Cafe in Bloomfield.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Thanks for taking the time to hear from me. Again, Jim Mazzona from DeVanville's General Store in the far reaches of the Northeast Kingdom. Maybe that the land that time forgot in some ways, which is we like. Just wanted to share a little perspective from a small general store, which is I want to point out to you a disappearing thing in the Vermont landscape. And so the context of my comments are sort of around what it takes to do what we do on our end of it. It's great to hear Mr. Albert from a producer's end and the complexities that he shared. From our perspective, we, for those not familiar with the area, we sit right on literally the banks of the Connecticut River. So we have the extraordinary challenge, as many Vermont businesses that are within, say, 20 or 30 miles of the river, of the Connecticut River and the border to New Hampshire. We share the unique challenge of competing against New Hampshire and keeping what my wife and I believe is the fabric of Vermont and these small community-based stores alive. So any changes, right? Expanding the bottle bill, and I know it's gone through a lot of iterations. I think it was 10 cents. Now it's back down to 5 cents with some expansion to plastics and some other different type of beverage types. So those things all have a huge impact on us. I think you can appreciate that. I just to be quite honest with you, it's difficult to get employees to run the store. So to add another sort of responsibility to us. And also a cost. So I'm looking at it from a multifaceted way because that's the reality, right? I think I would say in general, I agree with what Mr. Albert's testimony was that, I think it's a problem that needs to be solved. The question is, how do we solve it? How do you solve it for the people of Vermont? So one of the other things that strikes me is that in my goings throughout the state, it seems like to me that the redemption system isn't working well now. So I just, and I'm not an expert, but I just would offer to you as layman observations. And so I wonder how something like this helps us get further down the road. So it maybe more to put it directly, maybe this was more of a top-down type of approach to garner additional funds as opposed to a bottom-up systematic approach to looking at see how we can achieve the goals that you want, but also make sure that the systems that we have in place and the impacts, the unintended consequences, if you will, of all those people in the system, us being the dirty end of the chain, if you will, and trying to make it sustainable and supportable, down the road yes.
Yeah, quick question. So retailers always walk into another shop with a different, a more educated eye than we folks as regular consumers. So when you're out and about and you say that you have the impression that the redemption system isn't working well, what kinds of things are you seeing or hearing from your colleagues in retail that have led you to draw that conclusion?
Well, first of all, just the density of them is probably not enough, and then their capacity may be something that I see just in my own dealings and the few that I've gone to up in here, they seem to also be having the same problems that I have, right, in getting employees to work. So, and I know that I think they're required to be open 40 hours, whatever it is. I don't know exactly that stuff. So just the sheer volume of stuff that they have to process seems to be an issue, one of the issues. And again, I'm sure there's others. I assume that maybe you guys have had a field trip somewhere to sort of look at those complexities and probably have your own observations. But again, that's just my anecdotal piece of it. In the Northeast Kingdom, if you look at the map of where redemption centers are, I mean, they're pretty much, on the fringes of the kingdom, if you will, if you sort of look at that. So whatever the reasons are for that. I'm trying to figure out what, I guess, as just a citizen, I'm trying to figure out what problem we're trying to solve here. And I think if that were narrowed in on maybe to Mr. Albert's testimony, we could figure out how to solve the problem and in a sustainable way that is also financially viable. So that's where I sit. Anyway, I appreciate you. I don't want to go on. I appreciate you hearing me. And I'm sure I'm not that much different than the other small businesses around the state that are trying to just run their business. And now they got to figure out water bottles and cases, all this other kind of stuff that, impacts real operations in my view.
So as a retailer, you redeem bottles. I don't know if you limit yourself to redeeming only the brands you sell, or you sort of come one, come all for your redemption work. How do you structure that?
Yeah, so it's difficult, right? What the requirement is, we don't do it often. I don't want to become there's no way I could become a redemption center. I'll lock my door tomorrow, so we have to do what we have to do. But that's difficult when if it's you have an employee there that doesn't know the difference between one and the other. So it gets difficult, and there's not a lot of storage. I don't know. I'm sure you see what I see. Any small store isn't really set up to be those people, right? This was something that was put in place with and the solutions had to solve themselves at the bottom end of the chain, if you will. So I think it's a difficult road.
Do you have an employee whose first duty, if not only duty, is redeeming bottles, or?
No.
Or are you at the register and then you might have to pop over and redeem bottles before you go back to the register?
Absolutely not. I can't. Like I said, it becomes. I mean, there's a separate issue. So the members of the committee here don't take this the wrong way. But I think you guys need to know the challenges of doing what we're doing far outstrip this. And there's no way that we'll ever have somebody dedicated to that. The doors will close long before that for other reasons. So I want to put my focus right. And I hope you guys can appreciate having these small village town-based stores in your community to serve that way. I want to put my focus on that and not something that can be solved another way. To Mr. Albert's testimony, I think that was, I really would encourage you guys to step back from this and maybe take a broader look at what you're trying to accomplish, both financially, environmentally, and all the different facets that you're looking at, and then sort of the waste stream and see how to, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but some people might argue the whole bottle bill thing is not, it's not a good model anyway. So to expand it, I guess, in my snarky side would say maybe that's not a good, maybe we need to look deeper. But I just, again, that's your role. My role is this is what's happening on the front lines. This is what's happened in the small businesses. Big businesses have a different ability to, overcome this, right? But I thought Vermont consisted of more small businesses than big ones. So I hope you can maybe consider that as you deliberate on this.
Have you ever investigated moving to a sort of an automated system that doesn't require your intervention. And what I'm thinking of is some grocery stores, for instance, have a reverse vending machine on site. And so like my local Hannaford's and Shaw's, they're selling a lot of product, but they're not touching any bottles. They just send their customers to the machine. Have you looked into that as an option?
I have not yet. I don't know. I'm sure. So I don't know the mechanics of it in terms of what the cost structure is, who takes care of it. I certainly know the retailer is probably dealing with some of the headaches of it. Somebody comes, it's jammed, it's not working. It's another distraction, right? But I can tell you one thing. That's very poignant for this group to understand. We all in the summer like to enjoy outdoor activities, right? So we might stop at our local general store to get a bag of ice to go out doing our activities of the day. I can't even get an ice cooler, an outside ice cooler that would hold, say, 100 bags of ice to support the community because we can't get people to deliver it to us. Okay, so, and that's actually true of some of our beverage vendors on the beer side. They won't come to us, but we have to meet them. So I guess when you look at those kinds of things, everything is a challenge, particularly in our part of the state. I know in Montpelier and Chittenden County, no problem. Plenty of opportunities, plenty of ways to solve these problems, but not so much in where I am.
Senator McDonald.
One of the options that we're considering is to permit you to relieve yourself and not be responsible to take back any bottles should you so choose. Is that a helpful option for a store like yours?
Yes, thank you, Senator McDonald. I actually had a note on that to ask about it. It would be, I think that would be a great relief, a partial relief. I also ask you to reconsider, also the many businesses, just the financial impact of trying to sell a product and provide a service. The differential that we see, everything is, and you may or may not know this, but as an example, right, when I buy Coke product or Budweiser product in Vermont, my cost, never mind the consumer cost with taxes and all that and the deposit bill, right? My cost just for the raw product is already higher than my competitor across the river. So I can't buy say a 12-pack of Bud Light, most famous beer in Vermont, for what they sell it for in New Hampshire. So I guess the answer is absolutely would love to be, I think most people relieved of that duty, but there's the other side of it too. There's the business aspect of it. There's, water bottles, I don't know when last time, water bottles labeling is wonky already. The labels all fall off and you can just see the mess with that. A beer bottle, some of the other cans and bottles, they're imprinted on the bottle. These loose labeling things could be problematic in handling on all ends of the spectrum. So, but thank you for that offer.
All right. Well, so it would be, I would like to understand that, when you're talking about cost of just your wholesale product cost, why is the same product across the river less expensive for that store?
I don't know if there's some underlying tax differential or, I'll give you an example. I know in the gasoline part of it, right, those taxes are all paid up front. We also have gas, right? So, the Vermont tax, there's the federal component, obviously, there's the state component. In Vermont, I think Vermont's component is 30 cents a gallon or something higher or something to that effect than New Hampshire. So I'm already competing at a disadvantage there. With product, I don't know why Budweiser, I don't understand with some of these other retail products, but we see it because I talk to other folks that run businesses in New Hampshire, or I go to the store and I can see something for sale or not for sale on, regular price for, let's say $10.99, and I'm paying $11 for that same product myself. Before I have to, mark it up. So I wish I could answer that, but it's a real impact. And so It's been a challenge in Vermont, right, since the beginning of time, right? New Hampshire has no taxes, lower taxes, or no taxes. So we're competing in that world. Is it fair to the rest of the state of Vermont to understand that or to not understand that? I just want you to know it's real, and it's getting even more difficult as the economy is in the state it is. So thank you.
Okay. I think we might prefer to say New Hampshire has different taxes, not no taxes, but for retail, that's I suppose the one that matters most. How about, we've also talked to retailers who, although they would like to be relieved of their obligation to receive bottles back of what they sell, they have said, on the other hand, I'm a little nervous about not having people returning because when they return, they often buy again. Have you thought about that one?
Yeah, I suppose there's a connection to that maybe in some instances. That hasn't been our experience in our 5 years of doing this. I don't want to, obviously, I just speak for myself, right? And I think we have a pretty loyal customer base. And a lot of our, mostly it's beer in terms of craft beer, Vermont craft beer, if you will, right? So I think that's the differentiator, for our little situation, right? And that's what all businesses need to figure out, right? What differentiates them. So in terms of alcoholic beverages, it's Vermont craft beer. So we want to support that industry, and so we do. So what we find is that you might be able to find something at the Banvilles, but you won't be able to find it at the next store may not have it. So if you can understand what I'm trying to point out there, it may be a different market for us. And, while we carry, like say Bud Light, I keep using that because that's up to somebody, Mr. Albert's point about no wine bottles on the side of the road, and the many green up days that I've done personally. He's right. I've never found a wine bottle, but I can tell you the percentage of Bud Light bottles is in the 85 percentiles. But what I would say about Bud Light for our business is we have it, we sell it, whatever, but it's a smaller portion of the sales as compared to the craft beer. So I don't think it's a differentiator for us, but I can see that point.
Senator McDonald.
The next question is, because you've been in the business only 5 years, in the last 5 years, what did you wish you had known more before you bought your business? And what was the biggest surprise that you've learned in the last 5 years as a general store in the Northeast Kingdom next to the river?
Senator McDonald, I hope you guys are up for a little humor. I'm glad I didn't know what I know now, because I probably wouldn't have done it. And you've heard that many times. But in all honesty, this store, if you're familiar with the Kingdom's been there for 105 years. So when it was shut down, it's obviously pretty rural. I mean, if you'd have to go up to Canaan to see the next general store on the Vermont side. And I will tell you this, because I drive to St. Johnsbury every day. There used to be 2 other stores on my travels on Route 2, and they're both closed. So there's very little, up in that way. So it became more of a way to serve the community and hopefully make the financial numbers work out. And when we're trying to pivot and morph into whatever the community will support, obviously the Kingdom and much of Vermont is heavily relied on. I would tell you that the tourist business is I don't want to call it tourism, but I want to call it people that don't live here full time. Right? They have camps, they have second homes, they have, and tourists, right? That community helps support us to a big degree. If there's no snowmobile in the winter, we might as well not be open. And snowmobilers, obviously, as you guys know, come from all over. So that impact, that aspect of it, Bloomfield has a census of 260 people. Most of them are above the age of 60. So you get the the sense of, it's not that the locals don't want to support you, right? It's just that there's not as many of them in your sort of catchment area where people are going to go to a small store to pick up sundries. So yeah, I'm not probably answering your question, and I'm glad I didn't know what I didn't know, because I think it's very fulfilling to do what we do for the community every day. But everything that impacts us from the outside that we don't have control on over, right? So something like that's happening here, right, or other things, that's just another barrier to success of a small business.
Well, thank you very much. It's always good to learn from people in the doing the grunt work, if I may say that.
Well, just one more thing. I would say, I know you said it only 5 years, but I can tell you that feels like more than 5 years to everybody that has done it. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mazzone. With that, I'd like to turn to Bruce Hyde. Good morning, Mr. Hyde.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I apologize if I keep my video off. My internet's a little bit slow, and I'm hoping that it will help facilitate this.
Sure. So you've had various incarnations that have brought you to the State House over time.
No, that's my father. That's my father. I think.
Well, that's your father. Okay.
Yeah, you're thinking about my dad, who served in the House for years. Yeah, I'm Bruce Hyde Jr. I own Mahuron Supermarket in Waitsfield. Tom Mahuron is my stepdad, and so I use the fourth generation term a little liberally, but I'm from Waitsfield, and I now own the store. So we've been open since 1941. My experience with this bottle bill is, I think, the most insight I can give you is as someone who owns a reverse vending machine. I actually lease that. Over the years, we did have a redemption center in Mahurons. We had a room that was kind of set aside, and it was basically, it ends up being like a trash heap kind of inside your store. When I came on 8 years ago, we converted that area into a deli and prepared food area so that we could use a lot of the products that were probably eventually getting thrown away, and kind of close our waste gap within our store. And our only option really to be in line with the law was to get this reverse vending machine. And I think that you've seen businesses pretty much across the board for retail sales get out of the redemption game. And I know that the biggest problem, and I've spoken to our representatives here about it, is the lack of availability for redeeming any items. And if the bottle bill goes through, it's going to be even more items that people rightfully will want to get their deposit back from. The issue with these reverse vending machines is that they're owned by a multinational company that is very slow to update their databases. So the biggest problem that I see on a day-to-day basis is that, Vermont products, Vermont beers, mainly, they are either never included in the database or are very slow to be included in the database. And consumers are rightfully upset when they're unable to redeem, for my example would be Lawson's beer, which is made right around the corner from me here, are unable to redeem, a beer that is recently produced. And I understand that frustration, and it's difficult for, our frontline workers to assuage those sort of concerns when they come and we have to say, well, this company is owned in Finland, and we try our best to update the database, but ultimately, if you're unable to redeem an item at our reverse vending machine, you're unable to redeem it at any of the TOMRA vending machines throughout Vermont.
So, Mr. Hyde, quick question. So that's surprising and unfortunate that Lawson's. I mean, I know your store because I've been in many times, but
Thank you.
the route right down the street can't be redeemed. So what happens to those customers? They come in and complain that they're using your reverse vending machine and it's rejecting, I don't know, half their cans or bottles.
Correct. Yeah. And, we've been able to get some of those Lawson's SKUs into the Vermont database here. But, as a short-term gap, I mean, I even spoke with Sean Lawson, and he was actually redeeming his cans specifically at the brewery for a brief time. But ultimately, like when somebody shows up to our reverse vending machine, a lot of times they are, trying to redeem a lot of items. And across the board, this machine is problematic, and we lease them. We have to do all of the upkeep for, in terms of emptying them out and doing kind of basic maintenance on it. But, I think I'm in probably the same position as a lot of retailers in that I do this to be within the spirit of the law as written. But I'm basically paying $500 a month to lease it. I've had this machine go down at times for like 2 weeks at a time, and you're waiting for, the company to come and fix it. And, I know that it's been a loss overall for us, because I end up paying, if you don't get above that $500 threshold in deposits, you're just on the hook to pay for it. And I mean, I could go through and look at the accounting of it, but I know overall we've certainly spent over $1,000 for sure a year to have this available. And the obviously, if it was profitable for a store like me to do our own deposits, we would be doing it across the board. And I don't think you're seeing that at any store across Vermont for grocery at this point, outside of the reverse vending machine model.
Can you help us understand a little better? I mean, RVMs have been presented to us as an option, a viable option, and it sounds like they're less easy to use than we might have thought. So can you help us follow the money? You sell
Yeah.
fill a product, there's a nickel, and you've collected it, but how does that sync up with what happens at the reverse vending machine?
Do you mind just repeating that? I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Like I said, my internet's terrible, so.
Sure, sorry. Just to understand the money, so reverse vending machine, if you were the one redeeming the bottle, you would have already collected the nickel deposit, and you're just sort of handing the nickel back over to the customer. So that seems pretty straightforward. But what happens when you've sold the product and now someone takes it to that machine? Now the machine is giving out the nickels, right? And then
Correct.
does Tamara come to you at the end of the month and say, you owe us, $74 worth
Yes.
of nickels that we gave out?
Well, what they actually dole out is a receipt that they then bring in the store, and we give them the money the consumer the money based on that receipt that comes out of the machine. Tamra, for this sort of sorting and convenience service, takes a percentage of every deposit that we pay back, and ultimately, if we are able to have the machine up and running and it does enough deposits, that would overcome the deficit, and then we would get a small commission at the end of the month on top of that should outweigh what we're paying out, basically. But in practice, very rarely do we hit that threshold for it to be a profitable month. And we're an independent store, but I would say we're not a small store. We're a supermarket, and if we can't make it work, we have a lot of consumers that are using our machine, and it kind of shocks me that if it's not profitable for us, I can't imagine what it would be like for a smaller general store. I mean, they'd be just on the hook for hundreds of dollars a month to lease one of these machines.
So is the math here again, just so that we get money drives a lot of the decision making. So I feel like we should know how the money works. If you have had at least $500 worth of bottles redeemed through the reverse vending machine, does that mean it zeroes out that lease charge for you?
Correct.
Just-
Yep. And they're paying for the raw materials, really. That's what this company is paying for, I guess.
Okay,
And
and then in terms of other costs to you, you say you do maintenance on it, stuff like that. So in a typical day, do you have to go to the machine once and pull out, I don't know if they come out crushed or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
two or three times a day generally. These machines all crush and shred, shred cans and crush glass. And you have bins. We had to purchase like a shed, lockable sort of shed area so that we can, as we empty this machine, that we can store it in there until Tomra can come pick it up. They generally pick it up about once a month. I think that their pickup frequency has a lot to do with the volume that you're producing. So, in the summer months, I've got a large shed full of, crushed up soda cans and beer bottles. You can imagine the bees that love that. It's not a nice thing to have. But I mean, there's general maintenance to it, we cleaning and the emptying of it. I think, in practice, I have a couple people that probably got, I think, $2.50 to $3 an hour raises to be have that be in their part of their purview on a day-to-day basis.
I suppose you pay for the electricity as well.
Correct. Yep. And the internet, because it has to be connected to the internet as well.
We don't usually do it this way, but Mr. Aller, you have your hand up. So do you have a question for Mr. Hyde or something?
Well, I guess for everybody, just wanted a wine bottle is a much heavier piece of glass than what that machine normally gets. I wonder if the machine is designed to be able to contain that kind of glass, or is going to split the sides of the machine apart. I just don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, we have some larger glass bottles that are in the database that it does take. So that alone might not be the biggest issue, but I do see that as we add all of these Vermont only containers, that the database is never going to keep up with the number of items that are going to be added to this system, and it's very hard to try to get Vermont only stuff in there because we're at the bottom of the list of priorities for a company like Tomra.
Yeah. So the machine, I've seen these things, but I'm still learning about how they work. They scan for a barcode on everything that they accept.
Correct. Yep.
And if that product code isn't in the database, then it spits it back out.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. So back to you. We interrupted to get into learning more about reverse vending machines.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at sort of the bill as it's written right now, I think that, and I could be wrong, I apologize, but I think the word carton is still in this bill. Depending on how that's defined, I think that it could be defined as a box of wine or any number of sort of paper-sided cartons of liquid that we have in the store. We have, aseptic bottles for juice and stuff. All of those things, a lot of times will not fit in those machines. So definitely like a box of wine wouldn't fit. And, I do think that the problem is the redemption model in Vermont. If I had a state redemption center in town, I would have very little issues with this bill. If the state had figured out a place where all of my consumers could go and drop off their deposit items in town, there would be very little issue from my end. But what I think ends up happening is that because our nearest redemption center, it's been kind of on and off again in Waterbury, it becomes a bit of a regressive tax on the folks that aren't able to drive over the mountain. If they really need this money back, and they need the money from all of their deposit containers. I mean, generally they're having now to drive 20 miles or 15 miles to get it done. I think if we had more redemption centers and it wasn't put on, I don't believe that those are profitable for private business, but if there were more redemption centers in these communities, I don't think most retailers would be having their main issues about this.
Has the amount of shelf space in is a supermarket history question, I suppose, so I may not be fair, but I don't know if you know the answer or have an impression. Is the amount of shelf space in a store dedicated to selling beverages gone up substantially in the last decade or more? I'm just wondering if a much bigger part of your business or everyone's business is selling beverages.
I would say that in general, the amount of choices across all segments of grocery have increased. If we're talking about it from like when, my stepdad was here or his dad was here, we had a lot less choice of any item if you go back far enough. So now we have, 200 candy bars as opposed to 12 candy bars. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair to put that question directly about beverage. But what I will say is that we are very lucky to live in a state that has a huge amount of producers of fine beverages, from beers to wine to cider. And I think that, stores, this bill in a way almost would penalize you from basically having all of those options represented. I think for us, a big plus to doing business in this state is the amount of different producers and different items that we have for beverage. Yeah.
Great. Senator McDonald.
Would raising the handling fee make more opportunities for people other than yourself or redemption centers to take up the empties?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty simple economics question. I would argue that the original House bill, the handling fee, would not move the needle for standalone redemption centers. When I was a kid, like the Village Grocery here, they did a lot of deposit business. The minimum wage was also a lot lower, and you were able to get a lot more help. And that was a profitable part of their business. So the handling fee, though, I mean, if you're talking pennies, no, we're not. I'm paying, for the most part, my average hourly wage is very close to $20 an hour, and we have a $15 minimum wage here at the store. I don't believe that in our area any business could open and pay less than sort of $15 an hour and get people to come out. So the handling fee we're talking, it was significant amount more than what the House was deliberating.
So is that a yes?
I'm going to say no. I'm saying no. I'm saying no. I'm saying no. I don't think even if you doubled the handling fee, it would move the needle on redemption centers. No.
Would it be harmful to your business if we doubled the handling fee?
It would. No, there would be probably no change for my current situation. No.
Thank you.
And heading south from Waitsfield, what's the next redemption center?
It's a good question. Sometimes the store in Granville does have will take deposits, but I know that they've been spotty based upon their capacity. So sometimes I've sent people down there and they've been able to redeem their containers, and sometimes they have not been. But it's really been a moving target lately. COVID shutdown, did have an effect on who was taking deposits. A lot of folks decided, especially people that were handling them, personally stopped taking deposit containers during the pandemic due to concerns about contamination and stuff. So.
And any other questions for Mr. Hyde? Senator McDonald.
Say hello, your dad for me. The last time I saw him, we were dumpster diving in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I definitely will. Thank you, Senator.
Okay,
Small world here. Okay, so thanks, Mr. Hyde, for weighing in. We ended up talking a lot about our reverse vending machines. Anything else that we want to share with the committee before we go on to our next guest?
Yeah, briefly, I'd just say that, I am a huge proponent of recycling and a huge proponent of all the great work that we've done in Vermont to keep our sort of natural spaces natural. I think a perspective from independent grocer, I hope you guys take it to heart, because I think we're on the same team here in what we're trying to accomplish. It's just sometimes business is difficult enough to do in Vermont. To make it more complicated for the frontline people can be prohibitive. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks for what you guys do.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for participating. With that, I'd like to turn to Dennis Noel. Mr. Noel, good morning. Thanks for joining us from the southern climes of Bennington.
Morning, Dennis.
Good morning. How are you, Brian?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So I don't know how much of the last conversation you've heard, but we're looking at the bottle bills that came from the House, and we're talking to people on the front lines to really understand better how the bill, if we were just to enact it the way we received it, what kind of impacts that would have on you. And then secondly, if we're just looking at the system overall, do you have suggestions about the current system to improve it? Second.
I'm not sure how to start. I will give it a try. Brian visited my center on Monday and got to see some of the big challenges we currently have. So to add the bill that came from the House, I guess the only word I could use would be physically impossible for me to handle it. We are challenged with three different things. One is it's with Tomra right now, it's just not working to where it would benefit me in terms of, I think they got issues with staffing, bus drivers, things like that. But my volume, I would say we probably, and now that we're in the spring, the volume has pretty much doubled since a month ago. So what we used to do in a day, we're now doing twice as much.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt. When you say the Tomra part's not working for you, can you say a little more about in what way doesn't it work for you?
Well, the challenge is a combination of things. One, supplies, glass supplies. We are not reverse vending. We are manually doing it, and these big bins of glass take up a lot of space. And then for the month of February, well, lately we haven't challenged getting supplies. So we have to figure out how to store the glass that we get. We were going around all over town getting watermelon bins to try to put the glass in. So the supplies is a big issue. And the other part about supplies is it takes up so much room in the trailer that you cannot fit all the other stuff in the trailer. That's one thing. Two is that we're supposed to be picked up twice a week. And right now we are lucky to get picked up once every 10 days. And my facility probably holds the equivalent of 1.5 to 2 trailers full. So we get missed. We actually had to shut down the center on Sunday because we were so full we couldn't fit any more product in there. So that's what's going on now.
Okay, when you say problem with supplies, so I haven't heard that before. Do you mean that just the boxes or containers or bags that you're putting all the empties into?
The biggest supply issue is with glass. They have bins, which are the size of a pallet, maybe a little bit bigger than a pallet.
The big plastic bins?
Yes, they call them Gaylords.
Yeah.
And they're huge. And when we cry, we eventually get some. And I don't know what the situation of supplies is on their end. I'm just telling you what is on my end.
Does
And
Tamara provide you with gaylords?
they're supposed to, yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So that's, and if you're going to, based on the current bill, add all that glass, that will become a physically, beyond physical challenging, where we at times have to store the glass outside the building unsecured, which allows for theft and re-redeeming. So, how do you keep it inside and secure? That's a big challenge. I apologize. I don't want to bounce back and forth. My biggest issue with the bill is glass. Glass and any new plastic containers that are not, when you start adding plastic Gatorade and all that other stuff, which is not part of the system now, you're going to multiply our number of containers by 3 times, if not more than that. I understand the issue with water bottles and cans and that kind of stuff, but I'm going to focus on glass right now. Currently, neighboring states like New York and Massachusetts do not offer redemption on wine. So you are opening a big Pandora's box with wine, because none of the vendors, none of the wine bottles are going to have redemption on them. So you can get Apothic Red from New York and Massachusetts and have to redeem it in Vermont. And you're going to ask us to differentiate where they bought it from. That's a big problem, big problem, because you're going to get, I don't know if the word is fraud, but you're going to get neighboring states bringing it over that they never paid a deposit on. Where the other thing on the vendor side of it, you're going to have to label every bottle that they produce. And you're talking millions of bottles that they're going to have to put a 15-cent sticker on or a 5-cent sticker on to before we receive it. And then we're going to have to manage whether it has that sticker on it or not. So it's a physically impossible challenge, in my opinion. That's a big, never mind, wine bottles are bigger. They're going to take up more space. They're going to take up more bins. And that it's going to be almost a physical impossibility for me to deal with wine and that extra glass. The other part of that is staffing. I am challenged staffing wise right now, where I've had to close in this year because I had nobody to operate the, and to double the amount of redemption. I don't know how I do it. I really don't know how I fit, because we're short staffed now. How am I going to hire 1 to 2 more people? Because we'd have to have 2 people all day, every day to handle that kind, and which we mostly do, except for certain days. I mean, I have 16-year-old kids coming in after school to help me out because I can't get staff to work. So, and then the other thing would be, I'm trying to think. I lost my train of thought. I apologize. I guess I'll take any questions if I bounce back and forth, but the biggest thing is just physically impossible to do it. I don't know how I do it. I really don't. I understand about expansion, but that's not the whole solution, because unless Tomer is willing to pick us up more often, which they will tell you they will, but it's going to be a physical impossibility for me. So I'm open to questions. I apologize.
Sure.
I'm just going around in circles, so that's just me, but
No worries. Senator Campion.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Dennis. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the tour that you gave me on Monday. And I know the committee has also been getting out to see places. The Tamra thing is something that everybody is saying, that's for sure. I'm looking at my colleague here across the table, Senator Westman. He's also hearing that. The other themes that I continue to hear from folks is the space issue, and I don't know. One idea with space is, is there a way for us to give people more time to get ready for some changes, and some money to get ready for some changes? What would it be like? And this really isn't a question. It's just me sort of thinking aloud and letting the committee and others know where my head is at. And that is, can we give folks like you and others some dollars to expand and some time to expand before we take our next step? So that's just one thing that I think is important to consider. I don't know how to handle the Tomer situation, which everybody and their brother keeps mentioning to us. I don't know if there's any way for us to get them to come more regularly, because in part, I think they're the only gig in town, right? I mean, they're all of New England. I mean, they're all over the place, and they have no competition. And that's one of the situations we're running into. So I appreciate the testimony. I appreciate the tour, and it helped me, get my head around it a little bit more. So thank you.
Couple things if I can add.
Yeah.
This is not a slam on Tomra. I mean, every business has its challenges, especially with staffing. I know they're short drivers. The drivers work under certain rules, and so that becomes part of their challenge too. My thought is, looking at the bill, is I realize that somehow we have to come up with a compromise, but if the legislative branch, and I'm including the House with you people, are trying to make the redemption center the solution, that just isn't going to work. It just isn't going to work. I think I love to be part of the solution, but we can't be the solution, because physically, if this thing goes through the way it is, I would have to reconsider whether I even have the redemption center, because it would be such a challenge for me and my business to try to make it operate in a manner that's beneficial to me and the community. Because one of the things I just thought of too, right now, we are so busy that on days like today, where it's going to be in the mid 40s to 60 degrees, we will have people waiting 45 minutes to an hour to get redeemed. Think about that. On Saturdays, it's literally an hour-long wait. We have people coming to the center with dump trucks full. You know what I mean? So if you're going to triple the amount of containers per person, there has to be some consideration that, one, it's going to minimize how many we can do in a day, and two, the length of time someone will wait. And, there's only 2 of us in Bennington that are doing this redemption full-time. Foster's, I'm not sure, they're not open all the time. And I know my competitor Willie's is closed on Sundays every week because of staffing. So it is it's not an easy fix, but even if we were to staff, people are still waiting 45 minutes to an hour per person, depending on the size of the redemption. I guess that's so. My biggest, if I have a huge, I'm challenged with the glass because nobody wants it. Tomer doesn't want it. Casella doesn't want it. So that should tell the committee something, that I think if you were to invest developmental dollars, research what we can do with the glass and that kind of stuff, because that's a big storage issue. It's a huge storage issue, and something that I don't think expanding would even solve, because it just takes so much space up. And so I hope I would go ahead.
Senator McDonald.
I don't wish to be glib, but one of the solutions is simply send it all to the landfill and send the bill to the soda companies and the beer companies and all of those people to pay for it. Is that a solution? Because it's going to drive the price of the stuff up, but it'll be covered and you won't have to worry about it. Would you recommend that?
No, and you brought up, no, I mean, I don't think that benefits anybody, because one of the things that will happen if you add the wine to the thing is, don't forget, there's going to be a tremendous amount of labor for these vendors to put stickers on the bottles.
I'm
and
just
that'll-
take it all to the landfill and cover it up and pay for the landfill and send it to the wineries and the breweries and send them a bill.
I apologize. I don't think that's the solution.
Well, we're stuck
because-
somewhere between, the current system and a solution like that. And we're looking for some recommendations on how to make it work best for you and for your customers.
Yeah, but when I heard the House last year, there was talk about needing glass for the roads and stuff like that. To me, if there was some type of, I don't know what the research into what to do with the glass, that seems to be the biggest issue, because nobody wants it other than finding somebody who does and creating a plant that can process the glass to be used on roads, or, I'm totally third party to that. I just overheard that last year. And to me, we can gradually increase. I sense what's the compromise? Would that be a correct question? I mean, 'cause
What do we do with stuff that no one wants?
yeah. I don't know. I've only been dealing with stuff that I'm supposed to take, but
No one wants it.
yeah, it's trust me, I applaud Vermont. I've lived in Vermont my whole life, and I want to keep Vermont green too. It's just I'm just trying to physically. When I bought the business 20 years ago, I never envisioned this day would come to deal with this. And I've expanded. I built a new building, as Brian knows, being part of my community. I built a new building probably 7-8 years ago to accommodate the influx of redemption, and I have room to make it bigger in the back, but I don't have room to. That's just me. I can't talk about. Obviously, there's some facilities in Vermont that could handle the expansion, but that would mean people would have to drive 30-40 miles to go and get their stuff redeemed. And yes, sir.
So you collect the stuff and you organize it, but it's not your responsibility, is it, to figure out what to do with it ultimately? Someone
No,
takes.
Tomer picks it up, and we just have to make sure it's sorted properly. Yeah.
Okay, so the idea of what to do with the glass, that gets handled further down the line from you.
Yeah, Tomer takes it. We don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just trying to manage till Tomer comes and picks it up.
And would they pick it up? Is that your
They
understanding?
pick it up. The challenge is the magnitude, the volume. The volume
Yeah.
would be really. They'd have to pick me up almost every other day.
Wow. So you had mentioned that if the volume were to grow, Tom might, you're speculating what we've heard, they said, well, we could pick up more often, so we could handle it. But the current situation, we're already hearing that you are consistent with almost, I think, every person redeeming, whether a retailer or a redemption center, that they're not getting pickups from Tamra often enough to keep managing their current flow. And
that's 100% correct.
Yeah. And what happens when you say we need to be picked up more often?
Well, it becomes a weekly phone calls and going through all these stresses of urgency that we need to be picked up. Just this past month, I had to be skipped. I was skipped. I'm scheduled for twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. And they skipped me on Thursday, and within those 10 days, I filled up completely. Where if they pick me up, I could easily still handle current operation. There was a time in March where they skipped me for 12 days, which is huge. The other thing about, you got to understand, I don't get my money back until Tomer picks me up. If I have a full center, that's anywhere from the tune of $12,000 to $15,000 I have sitting there that I've already given out to the customer. You know what I mean? So and it takes, 7 to 10 days to get my money when they pick me up off what they just picked me up, not what's still in the trailer. It's still in my facility. So, there's also, and Tomer's very good. When they pick me up, they pay. That's not an issue. The issue is not the payment from Tomer. The issue is timely pickup so I can eventually get my money. But if this bill goes through, they would have to pick me up 3 times a week minimum, probably, just because of the volume increase as it is. And that's
When
provided I
they're-
can deal with it from a customer service point of view.
When they're picking you up, do you have to have any member of your staff participate in that, or do they take care of it all? And you can keep on doing front of house work, redeeming? Or does it?
I choose, this is me, I don't know what my other peers do. I choose to make sure somebody is there, 1, to assist them, and 2, to make sure, because we have to verify counts. Because of all this sorting, there's, if you look at one of their invoices, there's 30 lines of different kinds of bottles that they have to track before they goes in the trailer. So, between 16-ounce cans, 12-ounce cans, 24-ounce cans, 2-liter plastic, 1-liter plastic. I mean, that's all about the sorting of it. So those all have separate invoice lines that we have to make sure the counts are there. So I make sure I have a staff member verify those counts. And the way they count it is they manually, if we have 100 bags of 12-ounce cans, they count 10 of them, and it's an average thing. So they physically count 10 bags, and then we get the average for the 100 out of those 10 bags. So we make sure that the counting bags are properly tagged, because they tag the counting bags while they put them in the trailer. So there is a process of verification on that, what goes on the truck. And I make sure I have a person there. Do we need to have a person? Tomer does not mandate it, but because of my operation and the way I operate, I make sure I pay someone to be there.
And the center we were at earlier this week, a Tomer pickup took 6 hours to complete.
Yeah.
Does that match your experience?
It's about 4 hours, yeah.
Okay. Senator Campion?
I'm sure this is on your list, but we do need to hear from Tomer.
We've had them.
I didn't, when?
They were one of our first witnesses.
Did they say that they would agree to increasing their number of drivers?
They did. So we should have them back, because
I would love to have them back, because I don't know if we can put pressure on them or not. I don't know how we can, but they're the only gig in town for all of New England. But if we want to expand this, if they could commit to picking folks up, it would be huge.
That be with a contract or in law that they would make that commitment, or?
yeah, well, it's very interesting. So the problem is
Wow.
that
I don't,
we've
to be
heard
honest
this.
with you, gentlemen, I don't see that.
Right.
That's not 100% of the solution. Having Tomer pick us up more is
Right.
not 100% of the solution.
Right. Okay. So so thanks so much for your testimony. Again, between all of us visiting local redemption centers and us going as a group to see one earlier, and now your testimony, we're getting a much clearer picture of what, I think the concern the committee has is on logistics. Like, okay, everyone wants to do better on solid waste. The question is, do we have a system that can be changed in the way proposed, and will it work? As simple as that. And I'd say right now, we're not certain that it will work. As a matter of fact, we're getting testimony like yours that suggests
Right.
it will not work. So,
I think it's a physical impossibility for me, even with Tomer picking me up more often, because it's just going to be less people with bigger redemption. You know what I mean? So it's almost, I'm going to fill the pie either quicker or I don't know. I question, like I said, if I said it earlier, I am so concerned about the glass. The glass is a big part of the issue for me. And water bottles is another one too, but only because there's so many kinds of water bottles. The supermarkets have full aisles of water. I mean, you're talking, just that alone, what it's gonna add to
Yeah.
the volume
Yeah.
is,
Senator Campion.
Yeah. I guess I'm just looking for, kind of goes back to what Senator McDonald was saying, where is that, what can we do? If we can, go into I don't know if we could get Tomra back to get them into some kind of contract with the state that would pick people up more regularly, give folks more time to, as the chair refers to it, as more of a runway, if you will, to get ready. And I mean, I, for one, am not averse to helping people build out. I think my fear is that it's, as I think everybody's, if we close anybody, then how much farther are they driving? How much, what'll happen to some of these smaller shops? So I'm hoping there's, I think, and unless I'm misreading the committee, I think everybody's trying to get to some kind of middle ground on this.
Right, and we heard testimony on Monday on our, Tuesday on our field trip that Tomra doesn't make money running their operation. So, that we need to ask them directly. Because if they're not profitable, then that puts them in an awkward place to add expense to operate the system. And so I'm not gonna, I don't know if that's true or not, but someone who was on the tour who seemed quite well informed about the system made that remark. So we need to know, we need to vet that and learn more there.
Ask who Tomra said they're not making money.
Tomra did not.
Okay.
Somebody else did.
Okay.
So, hearsay for now.
Right. You have the corner market of the United States. Gotta get somebody.
yeah. But, all right, gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and like I said, I have no problem being involved in helping figure things out. My suggestion would be very small stages and not mandated stages either, because I think it has to be something that's reviewed on an ongoing basis versus just throwing it all in and see if we can handle it, because that would be chaotic. It would just be really bad.
Another battle of Bennington. Okay.
Yeah. No, yes. So.
All right. Well, thanks again, Mr. Noam.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Dennis.
much. All right, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Committee, we have two things. We've had to adjust the schedule because of other people's schedule, but so let's take a 20-minute break to 10:15.